Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. I'm Will Robinson Smith. Will be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And for our friends over on the West Coast, a good but very late morning as we're just before the noontime hour there. Bottom of the hour, of course, as we are preparing to see the launch of SpaceX and its Falcon 9 rocket on its 11th rideshare mission, dubbed Transporter 11, setting to lift off at 11:56 a.m. Pacific, 2:56 p.m. Eastern, excuse me, 11:56 a.m. Pacific, 2:56 p.m. Eastern, 18:56 UTC. On board are 116 payloads that are getting ready to deploy over the course of more than 2 hours. Dozens of companies, lots of countries, and lots to talk about as this mission is preparing to move forward. We do have word from SpaceX that fueling is in fact underway, which is good news for those of us wanting to see a launch today. It also means that SpaceX is committing to that launch time you see there on your screen. For those unfamiliar, once SpaceX begins fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, because it uses a load go style of operations, it fuels essentially up to the final minutes prior to liftoff. So now that it has begun loading both liquid oxygen on board the first stage and RP1 or rocket grade kerosene on board both the first and second stages, they are now targeting the liftoff time you see here on your screen. Now, T-minus 26 minutes, 22 seconds and counting. Want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for running the technical operations of the broadcast today. And to our wonderful moderators in the live chat. I see Astro Jen, Callistia Lee, Astro Joe popping in and helping us out today. Really appreciate that from the three of you. I believe Rusty Shackelford is holding it down over on Launchpad Live, so appreciate him as well. And be sure to keep our eyes peeled for Stephanie B, although given the time in Australia, about 12 hours ahead of where we are here on the East Coast, it's 2:30 in the morning. I would be shocked to see her join us, but you never know. You can help out our moderators in the live chat by A, not using all caps, and B, being respectful to each other, and C, keeping things apolitical. There are plenty of other politics forums, especially in an election year here in the United States, and we respectfully ask that you look to those for that kind of conversation, but feel free to talk about life, space, other things here. And again, just be respectful of one another. Our thanks to the more than 2,600 of you who are watching with us live as we're kicking off our coverage this afternoon here on the East Coast. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button to allow some more folks to find their way into our live coverage as we're preparing to see this stack of payloads heading up into orbit today. This is just one side of the payload integrator that will be deploying all these satellites over the course of, again, more than 2 hours for this mission. We're also powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube, so thanks to folks like James, Sean Coffey, I Am Lita, Eric Dickens, Mystic Images, Art, Alan, McKeefin, Fig 816, and many others. Leslie Daniel, good to see you. Runs with Scissors, hello. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course the ability to watch all of our launch liftoff moments from the East Coast in 4K. And again, mentioned this earlier in the week, but bears repeating. Certainly a big thanks to our sustaining channel members for helping to keep us going. Also provides us the opportunity to bring you good on-the-ground reporting, as we did last week, and we're still doling out the fruit from that, from our various stops to both the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, as well as to Rocket Lab's satellite facility in the Long Beach area of Southern California. In fact, earlier today we published a first article from our Rocket Lab visit talking about the two Escapade satellites that have now hit the road and are making the road trip out here to Florida ahead of their launch to the Red Planet atop Blue Origin's first New Glenn rocket. So lots to talk about with that mission. You can see some of our reporting live on the website right now. That is, of course, spaceflightnow.com. Keep your eyes peeled to the YouTube channel. There'll be a video version of that story coming in the very near future. And of course, coming up next week, or I should say, starting at the beginning of next week, we'll have lots more reporting connected to the Polaris Dawn mission, as we'll be just now a week away, starting on Monday, from the launch of Jared Isaacman and his four-person mission, which will include the first commercial spacewalk. Last but not least, bringing it back to today's operation, though, if you have a comment or question about today's mission and your comment or question about this or other space happenings is appropriate to put out on our show, we'd love to bring you into the chat. You can do so using the super chat feature here. Not only will he give us interesting things to talk about, but it's another way to help support what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and it is very much appreciated. I also want to welcome Mark, joining us with channel membership at the Pad Leader level. Welcome aboard, sir. Glad to have you with us. Currently T-minus 21 minutes, 43 seconds and counting to the liftoff of this Falcon flight. Getting ready to send up, as I mentioned, 116 satellites. Heading up to a sun-synchronous orbit where they will be deployed over the course of more than 2 hours. Fortunately, it sounds like it's not going to be a foggy launch liftoff down at Vandenberg. So in about 10 minutes, we'll be seeing eyes on the rocket, and we'll be able to verify that with our own eyeballs altogether. If for whatever reason SpaceX is not able to launch today, they do have a backup window that opens tomorrow, August 17th. There'll be another 53-minute window opening up at 11:20 a.m. Pacific. So far, it sounds like all is on track with this mission here. As you can see with the stack, lots of different customers who are on board this particular flight. Do have an article up on our website, spaceflightnow.com, if you'd like to peruse and read a little bit more about some of those who are on board this particular transporter mission. Customers from the UK, from Chile, Australia, Japan, the United States, and more on board this mission. We'll talk about some of those as we continue on. I do want to talk about the countdown timeline, some of the milestones still ahead of us for those unfamiliar or those just wanting a refresh. Countdown started at T-minus 38 minutes when the SpaceX launch director gave their go for the start of prop load. As mentioned, that began with RP-1, or rocket-grade kerosene, being loaded on board the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. Liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. First stage helium load began at T-minus 30 minutes, same on the second stage at T-minus 26 minutes. That cryogenic helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes, loading of second stage kerosene concluded. T-minus 20 minutes, 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process begins. Manifests itself in what we know as the so-called big vent. Good visual feeling indication that everything remains on track and on time. They're preparing the feed lines ahead of second stage liquid oxygen load, which happens starting at T-minus 16 minutes. Moving on, the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines at the base of the Falcon 9's first stage gets underway at T-minus 7 minutes. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About a minute later, the first stage kerosene tank is full. At T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence begin. Starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the strong back, otherwise known as the transporter erector, here at Vandenberg will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank will be filled. About a minute later, second stage liquid oxygen load concludes on the second stage, and at that point, the vehicle is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. Hear the call out. You'll hear the call for the Falcon 9 being in startup. The propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure at that time. The SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin 1D engines are healthy and ignite, command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Again, coming up T minus 17 minutes, 17 seconds. Or at the time you see right here on your screen, 11:56 a.m. Pacific, 2:56 p.m. Eastern, and 18:56 UTC for those joining from around the world. But for those joining from the area near and around Vandenberg, just a heads up if you weren't already aware, this is an RTLS style operation. Stands for Return to Landing Site. What does that mean for you? That means, like we just saw with the recent Maxar mission, there will be a sonic boom accompanying the return of the Falcon 9 first stage booster to its designated landing zone. There at Vandenberg, that is LZ4, or Landing Zone 4. Currently T minus 16 minutes, 25 seconds and counting. At this point, the big vents will have concluded, and we're just about 15 seconds away from the start of second stage liquid oxygen load. Taking a look at the live chat here, I want to thank the now more than 4,500 of you who are joining with us live. Appreciate you being here on a Friday afternoon. Hope you've all had a wonderful, productive, otherwise satisfying week. For those who have gone back to school, whether that be university, college, or anything on down below, hope it's been a good first week back. If that's still coming up for you, hope you're enjoying the last hurrahs of summer vacation. I want to thank channel member I'm Lita for a $5 super chat, saying hello, Will and team. Thank you all for all you do. California loves you. Well, as a California kid born and raised, I will always have love for the Golden State. So right back at you. Another channel member, Michael McGrory, $2 super chat. Thank you, Michael, saying hi from Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Moving on with this mission, let's go ahead and talk about the trajectory for this Falcon 9 rocket. Show you where it's going to fly and once it leaves the pad. As mentioned, this Falcon 9 is going to be ascending from Space Launch Complex 4, or Slick 4 East, heading out and away to the west on this one, more than a southeasterly. This is more or less due west with a slightly southern bent to it. Call this southwesterly. As you can see, though, as we just mentioned, with the red line, that is the flight path back to LZ4 for the return to landing site operation. So again, if you've got some friends or family, or you yourself are in that area, just be aware you may hear a sonic boom when the booster comes back on in. Or as Johnny Cash sing, when the man comes around. Speaking of coming around, those payload fairings encapsulating the 116 satellites will be coming around again, as SpaceX will have those splash down in the Pacific Ocean under the support of parachutes. Company saves about $6 million per recovery effort, so it's important to them to make sure that they can get those back as often as possible, refurbish them, turn them around for future use. This is what it looks like when bearings are brought aboard a recovery vessel here. So far in the year, SpaceX has launched 80 Falcon missions, including 79 Falcon 9 rockets, 1 Falcon Heavy, looking for mission number 81 in just a little under 13 minutes from now. Taking a look at the live chat, I want to thank Louise Culp for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Appreciate that, Louise. And a thanks to Sharon Walker for a $2 super chat, saying looking forward to another great launch. We can all certainly hope that everything continues to progress nominally ahead of liftoff coming up soon. Currently T minus 16 minutes, or excuse me, T minus 12 minutes, now 16 seconds and counting. Not trying to step back in time here, folks, I assure you. On board this Falcon flight, among the multitude of spacecraft, you'll find this unique one here from Planet Labs. This is one of 37 satellites that Planet is launching. 36 are its Earth imaging satellites that it calls Super Doves. This particular one is a hyperspectral satellite called Tanger 1. This is a methane sensing satellite, and it's a collaboration between Planet, the organization Carbon Mapper Coalition, and also features some technology from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. According to Carbon Mapper Coalition, this is designed for very specifically focused sources of methane emissions. It says it can reach a scale, and I'll quote them here, of, quote, individual facilities and pieces of equipment like leaking gas pipelines, venting coal mines, or a leak in a landfill gas capture system. The data gathered from this satellite will be incorporated into its publicly available data portal to help better understand the sources and potential health impacts of excessive methane leaks, or just sources of methane. Another spacecraft that's on board this flight. Go ahead and roll this promotional video from them. This is Chile-based company Limu, getting ready to launch its Limu. Apologies, I butchered this pronunciation. Eng satellite? NGE. Not entirely sure on the pronunciation of that. But this will be studying the biodiversity within Chile. You can see their mission patch there for that flight. Just one of many on board, and we do have views now of the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see just a gorgeous and clear view of the Falcon 9 getting ready to make its ascent in just about 9.5 minutes from now. So for those in the California area and also in the Southwest, if you are able to catch some views of this Falcon 9 flight, be sure to tag us on Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter. You can find us simply by searching Spaceflight Now. Love to see what photos you come up with. Now T minus 9 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. A couple minutes away from the point where SpaceX will be doing the engine chill down sequence. Seeing that photo we shared earlier of the multitude of payloads that are attached to the payload adapter here. prior to encapsulation and payload fairings that are atop the Falcon 9. You can see one half of those in the background of this shot. Also notable for this mission, is we're just about to hit the 8-minute mark. The deployment company called Exo Launch is marking its 30th mission. Exo Launch is supporting the integration of 42 out of the 116 satellites on board. Going over the Falcon 9 rocket here. I'll start from the top and go to the bottom. Payload fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet diameter. Fairing halves, as we showed you on the map, will be recovered a little bit further downrange of where stage separation happens. Moving on down, the second stage is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust. Same as the first stage, burns the same prop mix, that being RP1 or rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen. Just beneath that, there's the inner stage, which is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. It has titanium wings that provide stability and steering, guiding it back down, in this case, towards landing zone 4. The base of the rocket, of course, the majority is the first stage. This is tail number 1075. It's going for its 12th flight today. Base of the Falcon 9 first stage are 9 Merlin 1D engines, which, same as the second stage, burn RP1 and LOX and produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. You can see a live picture here of landing zone 4. This is where the Falcon 9 first stage booster will be intending to land here. If successful, this will be the 20th landing here at LZ4. Overall for SpaceX, if this is successful, again, this will mark the 340th overall booster landing for the company to date. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Appreciate the more than 9,600 of you who are joining with us live, creeping up on 10,000. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. Allows more folks to find their way into our live coverage. That would be very much appreciated. Also want to thank Los Osos DLBKH for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Losos. Ramaj MGV for super chat as well. Thank you, Ramraj. One of our wonderful channel members, SG, with a $5 super chat. Thank you, SG. You're now T-minus 4 minutes, 41 seconds and counting. This is a compilation video from SpaceX illustrating sonic booms. You're now seeing the strong back retract sequence underway. The transporter erector pulling back about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It'll stay in that position until liftoff. In about 20 or so seconds, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. The SpaceX commentator noting that later this year, SpaceX intends to launch its second mid-inclination rideshare mission called Bandwagon 2. Though they did not note a specific date for that, but look out for that one coming up in the not too distant future. Now coming up on 2 minutes prior to liftoff here. See if we can squeeze in a couple more super chats in the interim. Welcome to Gargoyle 2556, joining us with channel membership at the mission specialist level. Welcome aboard, Gargoyle. We're glad to have you with us. Gav Tubbs with a €5 super chat saying, what a sight. Incredible every time. Lauren Seals with a $2 super chat as well. Thank you, Lauren. And Gargoyle with a very generous $20 super chat. A very sweet message saying that, making that note in memory of his late wife, Annette. Keep a kind heart thought out for you, Gargoyle. And I sincerely appreciate your support. Sorry for your loss. That extra venting you're seeing here on your screen are the ground gas closeouts as we are about to hear the SpaceX launch director give their go for launch. Let's listen in.
LD is go for launch.
And with that, we heard the poll go ahead that we are go for launch. Now just a little more than 30 seconds. Let's go ahead and listen in, and we'll join you with more commentary on the other side of liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go Transporter 11.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
And we'll do chamber pressure nominal.
Seconds into flight, beautiful
Power and telemetry
view
nominal
of the California coast at Vandenberg. We've cleared the tower and the Launch Complex 4 East. We've begun throttling down those Merlin 1D engines on the first stage in preparation for max Q.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
That's the point of maximum aerodynamic stresses during ascent.
And a good launch so far, as you just heard SpaceX throttling down ahead of max Q. There are going to be a few different events happening in fairly rapid succession here. Coming up at T plus 2 minutes, 14 seconds will be first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That'll be followed 4 seconds later by stage separation. The first stage will perform a flip maneuver about 4 seconds after that. 4 seconds after that will be the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Then about T plus 2 minutes, 31 seconds, the boostback burn will begin. That burn lasting just a hair under a minute in total. In between the ignition of the engines for the boostback burn and when that burn concludes, the payload fairings will be deployed just before the 3-minute mark. The first event coming up in just about a couple seconds for MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Stage 1 boostback startup.
And there you saw those events. Boostback burn. Coming up on fairing separation shortly. You can see those payloads nestled inside. And there go the payload
And there
fairings.
is successful confirmation of fairing separation. You can also get a good view of the payloads flying on today's mission. And a great shot there. You can see a fairing half returning back towards the California coast. As a reminder, we will be recovering those fairings and refurbishing them for use on a future mission.
Things going well so far with this Falcon flight. The boostback burn has now concluded. The next milestone that we're looking for is the first stage entry burn beginning. That's coming up at about T plus 5 minutes, 56 seconds. That burn will last until T plus 6 minutes and 12 seconds. You can see the hypersonic grid fins on the Falcon 9 first stage have been deployed. Those pulses that you're seeing in between those two grid fins that you just saw a little bit of actuation on, those are the cold gas thrusters that help to adjust the attitude or the positioning of the Falcon 9 first stage as it makes its way back down towards landing zone 4. Throughout the course of the deployment sequence, both ahead of and in the midst of, there will be a total of 4 burns of the Merlin vacuum engine. We're still in the midst of that first burn, which should conclude at about T plus 8 minutes and 14 seconds. The Falcon 9 upper stage will then continue on in a coast phase until T plus 50 minutes, 20 seconds. There will be a brief 3-second burn of the Merlin vacuum engine, and then a few minutes after that, we'll start the deployment sequence. First big deployment sequence here, where there will be about more than one payload deployed each minute. You can see some great ground tracking shots of that Falcon 9 first stage booster tail number 1075 in the SpaceX fleet, making its way back down towards the California coastline, hoping to have a successful 12th landing today. Coming up on the start of that entry burn here. Call for the entry burn. You can see that there on your screen now. Should be shutting down any moment. Got shut down there. Landing burn coming up. Just the central Merlin engine igniting. You can see the speedometer on the Falcon 9 first stage is dropping dramatically as that booster making its way back down. Falcon 9 first stage now traveling below the speed of sound. Let's go ahead and listen in as it makes its landing.
Stage 1 landing bird. Landing like deploy.
And that marks the 12th landing for this booster. It marks SpaceX's 340th landing of an orbital class rocket. Next up, just about 20 seconds, will be the Merlin vacuum shutdown, SECO, second engine cutoff number 1.
Stage 2 FTSO saved. And vac shutdown.
And there is successful shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine for the insertion orbit.
Nominal parking orbit.
And that call out indicating that we are in the target orbit for insertion of today's mission around planet Earth. So with that, the next event is going to be coming up at around the T plus 50-minute mark. That'll be the second engine start for the second time of our Merlin vacuum engine. We'll be back around in about 40 minutes to bring you live coverage of
And so far, a successful mission with this mission for the Transporter 11 rideshare operation. So far, good first burn of the Merlin vacuum engine. As you just heard, there will be a second burn coming up at T plus 50 minutes, 20 seconds, lasting just a few seconds, at which point the orbit will be circularized and they'll begin the deployment of the first batch of satellites here on this mission. First one coming up is called GainedSat 1A. That was manifested by ExoLaunch, which has 42 satellites that are manifested on this mission. The 30th time that this company is going to be deploying satellites on behalf of a multitude of customers. That'll be followed by a mini rideshare of its own. That's an Australian satellite called Warata Seed 1, also manifested by ExoLaunch. Those will be the first two set to deploy once the deployment process begins. And that's at T plus 53 minutes, 56 seconds. Before we go ahead and acknowledge some super chats here, because I want to thank the folks that have been supporting us during our live launch coverage. I'll just note for the record as well that once we go through our mission stats, we'll be wrapping up our dedicated live stream. However, since this is a long deployment period and we definitely want to allow you to see and hear that as it happens, we will be putting that over on our 24-hour live stream that is Launchpad Live. And we'll be doing some light commentary on there going in and out of the burns and the payload deployments. So if you'd like to continue following this mission, you can do so over there. But in the run-up to that, let's go ahead and wrap things up, or begin to do so right here where we are now. Our thanks to Ken Shaw 1 for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Ken Shaw. Mega Griswold with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mega. AZDKW65 marking 2 months as a channel member here with us. This, of course, happening prior to liftoff, saying, hoping for a successful launch. Thank you, Will, and Spaceflight Now for your coverage. Well, thank you, AZ, and appreciate your ongoing support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Thanks to Gable Deweese, or Duez, for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Gable, saying, go Falcon. Lori Jones-Wilson marking 9 months as a channel member at the pad leader level. Appreciate you being with us, Lori. And that's simply, hello all. Spencer McAlpine joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, Spencer. We're glad to have you with us. And thanks to David S. for a $10 super chat, saying, thank you, Emily Snodgrass, a payload engineer. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our mission stats as they currently stand here. First off, with the updated bar chart, now have 81 Falcon missions on the year. 80 Falcon 9 rockets and 1 Falcon Heavy. Moving on to the rest of our mission stats. This marked the 12th flight of this particular Falcon 9 first stage booster, 1075 in the SpaceX fleet. This was SpaceX's 365th Falcon 9 launch to date. As just mentioned, the 80th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 309th Falcon booster reflight, the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's overall 83rd launch of the year, including the Falcon Heavy and 2 flights from Starbase with their Starship rocket, preparing for Flight 5 in the not-too-distant future. This was SpaceX's 121st orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 87th from Slick 4E, and the 155th overall launch from this particular pad. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 20th touchdown at landing zone 4, marking the 74th land landing, and the 240th overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Finally, some industry stats. This was the 28th orbital launch from Vandenberg this year, the 87th from U.S. soil, the 96th from U.S. Rocket Company, and the 152nd orbital launch from around the world. And a congrats to India for a successful launch of its rocket earlier today. That was the 151st launch. It happened in the overnight hours. There have been 6 orbital launch failures on the year so far, so here's where our pie chart now stands. And with that, as mentioned, this will conclude our dedicated live stream here of the Transporter 11 mission, but don't you fret for those wanting to keep up with the deployment of all 116 payloads on board. We will turn you over momentarily to our 24-hour live stream channel, that being Launchpad Live, where we will continue to do some light commentary over there as the various burns come up. There are still 3 more burns on the Falcon 9 upper stage. And we will listen in and watch as the payloads are deployed. Those are going to be happening in basically 2 big batches. The first starting at about T plus 53 minutes, 56 seconds. And that will continue on until this one stretches for quite a while. Goes till about T plus 1 hour, 22 minutes. So nearly 30 minutes of fairly continuous deployment. Then there will be the third burn of the Merlin vacuum engine at T plus 1 hour, 45 minutes, and 21 seconds. It's just a very brief, less than a second burn. We'll enter into another coast phase. And then at T plus 2 hours and 27 minutes, there will be the fourth and final mid-deployment burn, I'll say, post-launch burn. And we'll see the last batch of satellites be deployed starting at T plus 2 hours, 30 minutes, 22 seconds. And that deployment sequence lasts up until 2 hours, 36 minutes, and 30 seconds. So still quite a bit left to see for those who are fans of satellite deployments. And again, that will be over on our live 24-hour live stream channel, Launchpad Live. I want to briefly thank Larry Williams for a $2 super chat. Thank you, Larry, saying love your coverage. Appreciate your support of it. And to John Morin for a $10 super chat. Thank you, John. Appreciate your support today. And John says, always enjoy your coverage. Thanks for the kind words. And thanks to our wonderful moderators, Astro Jen, Callistia Lee, and Astro Joe for helping us hold it down here in the live chat, as well as Rusty Shackelford, keeping it tidy over on Launchpad Live. We'll see you all over there in just a moment here. But RJ Pismo coming in at the buzzer with a very generous $20 super chat. Really appreciate that, RJ. Thank you for your support at that level. I want to thank our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, for helping run the technical operations of this stage of our live coverage. Of course, we are going to continue our work again over on Launchpad Live. But for those who have other things you need to attend to, appreciate you being here for this stage of our live launch coverage. And thanks to Callistia Lee for throwing in the link there to Launchpad Live. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others. And if these are our parting words to you as you head into the weekend, and I hope you have a wonderful one. And folks, we will see you next time. And until then, bye-bye.